to examine Form 941 line by line. Form 941 is the employer's quarterly federal tax return. Employers are required to complete and submit the return on a quarterly basis. Wages, employee taxes, and employer taxes are all reported on this form. The top section here in this box is where the employer information is listed, and over to the right is where we are going to indicate the quarter for which we are reporting. We would just click the appropriate box. Now down on line 1 is where we report the number of employees that were paid wages. So the actual number of employees that we had to which we paid wages is going to be reported on line 1. On line 2, this is where the taxable amount that we paid our employees for the quarter is listed. Note that this is not gross pay, but is taxable pay. This is the amount you based your federal income tax on. That's a very common error that is committed on line 2. On line 3 is the amount of federal income tax that was withheld for the quarter. So the amount that we withheld from our employees in federal income tax is reported here on line 3. Line 4 is rarely checked, so we'll just skip over that one. Line 5A. Here we list the amount of wages subject to Social Security tax. Keep in mind the earnings limit on Social Security. We're only going to enter the wages that were actually taxed for Social Security. And also look that we're reporting both the employer and the employee portion at 12.4%. It goes here. On line 5B, we'll list any Social Security tips we might have. We're probably not going to be using this line in our problems. On line 5C is for all the taxable Medicare wages. Remember, once again, we're only going to enter the amount of taxable Medicare. We're going to be reporting both the employer and employee portions just like we did up on the Social Security line. On line 5D is where we're going to list the additional Medicare tax. If we had a single individual whose earnings exceeded $200,000, then this line would apply. All wages subject to the additional Medicare tax are entered here. Remember, the rate for the additional Medicare is 0.9%. On line 5E, this is where the total Social Security and Medicare owed is listed. It is the total from lines 5A through 5D. Line 5F will likely not apply to us. And then on line 6 is the total of the federal income tax from line 3 at the top. And then the Social Security and Medicare total from line 5E. So we're going to total all 3 of our taxes here on line 6. Line 7 is where we're going to enter rounding differences. When we withheld taxes, we taxed each employee individually. On this form, we're calculating taxes on total pay. This was probably going to result in some kind of small rounding difference. We'll come back to this line once we get down to line 13. On lines 8 and 9, likely will not have anything entered on those, so we'll skip over them. On line 10, we're going to enter our total taxes after adjustments. So basically, we're just going to move the totals from line 6 and 7 down. We'll take the total tax and the rounding difference and put the total taxes down on line 10. Line 11 probably will not apply. And then on line 12, we're just bringing the taxes down once again to line 10. Now line 13 is very important. This is the amount that the employers actually deposited with the IRS. It's important that the number is the same as the number on line 12. If the amount's off by a few cents, this is where we get our rounding difference that we enter on line 7. This rounding difference should just be a few cents. It should never be over 50 cents. Now you will actually be listing the amount deposited by the employer on the next page here. The total deposits will be broken down on the next page or either on Schedule B. So the IRS is going to be looking to match up the amount owed on line 12 with the total that you deposited on 13, and they're going to make sure that you made your deposits on time. Line 14 should never have an amount due. If there's an amount due on this line, this means that the employer's deposits were not made on time or for the correct amount. Interest and penalties will apply if there's anything on the balance due. Line 15 is for any overpayments, if any. Like I said before, the employer deposits must be reported on the 941, and they're going to be reported here under Part 2 on line 16. The tax liability for all 3 months of the quarter are listed. Remember that the monthly depositor must deposit by the 15th of the following month for which he's reporting. If the employer is a semi-weekly depositor, then Schedule B has to be filled out. And Schedule B is just a more detailed listing of the liability. So for each month of the quarter, you're going to pick out the date you made payroll and list your liability for that payroll on that date. That's it for the 941. Hopefully this video will help you to more easily complete the 941s for Chapter 6 and for your comprehensive problems in Chapter 7.